Abraham Lincoln once wisely said that the best way to get a bad law repealed is to enforce it strictly. Someone else once wisely said that when it comes to politicians, if they didn't have double standards, they would have no standards at all. Viva Frei, Montreal litigator turned YouTuber, vlogging yet again from my car. I don't know what week we are on the lockdown. I lost track somewhere after the 9th or 10th week. I don't know how many weeks we have been on lockdown. I know that it's my wife's birthday today. It is my birthday next week. And when they first announced these lockdowns, never in a million years did I think we were going to be on lockdown for our respective birthdays. That being said, I do appreciate that these are not real problems and that we are extremely fortunate, all things considered. While we are extremely fortunate and faring as well as anybody could be expected to fare, having 3 kids and 2 dogs at home for upwards of 3 months now, it is amazing to me to see how the government has shifted the initial goalposts of this lockdown. In March, the goal of the lockdown was stated as follows. Canadians being urged to help, quote, flatten the curve of mycoronavirus. Goal is to slow the spread of the virus in order to reduce the load on the country's healthcare system. March 11th, 2020. It is now over 2 months later that objective has seemingly been reached, and yet we are still on indefinite lockdown. And this observation has led to what is hands down my most wildly popular tweet. It went from flatten the curve to find the cure. From social distancing to house arrest. From 2 weeks to 3 months. From we're in it together to snitch on your neighbors. From individual liberty to comply or pay fine. We lost the target, and government knows it. That said, I consider myself to be the type of person who finds the best in bad situations, and if this has been good for nothing else, I have learned a lot about constitutional rights. I've done a few videos on the constitutionality of these executive orders that has basically the entire world on lockdown. If you haven't seen any of those videos, I'll link one right here, give it a watch. Which brings us to the subject matter of this vlog, which has nothing to do with the constitutionality of these lockdown orders. It only has to do with the fact that the politicians imposing these rules are not following them themselves. The people creating and imposing these rules on the lowly hoi polloi are not following them themselves. Let's just quickly go over the 3 prime examples. If you haven't yet heard of these stories, and I suspect a lot of you haven't because it doesn't exactly make the front page, prepare to get frustrated. How Neil Ferguson, the architect of the lockdown, was brought down by failing to obey his own rules. The science behind the decision to lock down Britain had been set out in a research paper submitted by Professor Neil Ferguson, the government's leading epidemiology advisor, on March 16th. He and his team of computer modelers at Imperial College London's School of Public Health had predicted more than 500,000 people would die from mycoronavirus if no action was taken, or half that figure if the government continued with its strategy at that stage. But while the public was enduring the lockdown restrictions prompted by Professor Ferguson's advice, the Telegraph can now reveal that he was flouting the rules to see his married lover. He said he, quote, acted in the belief that I was immune, having tested positive for mycoronavirus and completely isolated myself for almost 2 weeks after developing symptoms, adding, I deeply regret any undermining of the clear message around the continued need for social distancing to control this devastating epidemic. I'm not commenting on the fact that Ferguson was having an affair with a married woman. That is really none of my business. It's not something I would do, but it's none of my business nonetheless. I am commenting only on the fact that this guy who tells other people what they have to do doesn't do it himself. And how relaxing is this rain? It's beautiful. But wait!
There's more! Hang on to your seat, baby, cause this one's a screamer!
Ontario Premier Doug Ford can't seem to follow the very same rules he imposed on Ontarians throughout the province. Ontarians? Ontarioites? Ontarians? Ontarians? Whatever. Ontario.
People from Ontario.
Doug Ford admits daughters visited him on the weekend contrary to Ontario's mycoronavirus rules. Premier Doug Ford appears to have broken Ontario's prescribed mycoronavirus physical distancing measures, saying 2 of his daughters who live in different households visited his home over Mother's Day weekend. Ontario's emergency legislation prohibits social gatherings of more than 5 people, even if held at a, quote, private dwelling. The rule does not apply to members of a single household or gatherings for funerals of 10 or fewer people. Can you imagine that we are now living in a world where the government is telling you how many people you can have in your own home? And where do they get this number 5 from? Do they just pluck it out of thin air? They say, oh, we have to limit the amount of people can have in their own homes. 5 sounds like a good number. Yeah, 5 will stop the spread of the virus. 6 is too many. 5 is good. But when it comes to funerals, we'll double it. You can have 10. The government literally telling you how many people you can have in your own home, how to live, how to grieve. And while they impose these arbitrary and draconian measures on the hoi polloi, they themselves are not following them. But it doesn't end with Premier Doug Ford, it goes even higher, straight to the Prime Minister of Canada. Some of you may or may not remember, but on Easter weekend, Justin Trudeau was urging Canadians to stay home, sacrifice their plans, even if it meant not seeing their family on Easter.
What do you think Justin Trudeau did?
Despite reportedly urging Canadians to stay home for Easter amid the Coronavirus Schmenschmendrick, even if it meant not seeing their families, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is defending the decision to go see his. The Schmenschmendrick forced Canadians across the country to abandon hopes of travel to see loved ones, and also came amid warnings from public officials for people not to travel to cottages unless that is already their primary residence, and really just not to leave their homes at all. But shortly after calling on Canadians to stay home and Skype that big family dinner, Trudeau crossed the provincial border from Ottawa into Quebec to visit his wife and 3 children at Harrington Lake. So while urging Canadians to stay home and sacrifice Easter to Skype that big dinner, while there is a prohibition on interprovincial travel in Canada, Justin Trudeau crosses the border to see his own family for Easter weekend. Quarantine for thee, but not for me. It's almost like they place greater value on the freedom than the potential risks of exercising that freedom. And guess what? I agree with you. The truth is, on a personal level, I don't care that they did it. I think the rules are arbitrary. I think they're draconian. I think they are bad laws. And the best way to get a bad law repealed is to enforce it strictly. The fact that the very people making the rules are not following them is a testament to how arbitrary and draconian they are. The newsworthy aspect about this is not that they're breaking the rules, it's just that they're utter hypocrites. Their freedom is not more important than my freedom. Their rights are not more important than my rights. I think there's an expression to the effect that a boss tells you what to do, a leader does it with you. And their conduct illustrates the fundamental problem that they think they are my boss. Now, just to avoid any ambiguity, I am following the rules even if I think they are absolutely arbitrary and draconian. I haven't had dinner with my parents in 3 months. I drop off groceries, I ring the doorbell, and I leave. I have not had dinner with my parents in 3 months, and they live just up the street. I haven't crossed the border in 4 months, even though I have family in Ontario. But if the government is going to set and impose arbitrary and draconian rules with hefty fines for disobedience, they had darn well better be sure to follow the rules themselves. And the fact that they don't or can't help themselves shows on the one hand that the rules are absolutely arbitrary, and on the other hand that they think they are our boss. But most importantly, it illustrates the fundamental principle that the exercise of liberty entails risk. How you doing?
Vlogging again?
Yes, I'm vlogging and I'm ranting. I'm a little irritated today. The exercise of freedoms necessarily entails a risk, and what our leaders are showing us through their conduct is either that they think the risks are minimal or they think their freedoms are worth more than ours. Alright, I think I'm done venting, and there was actually a legal angle to this vlog. What was it? Oh yes, that's right. The best way to get a bad law repealed is to enforce it strictly. When the scientists, the premiers, the prime ministers who enact and enforce those rules do not respect those rules, it is time to repeal those rules. Alright, I had actually better go inside because it is in fact my wife's birthday. I've been out for longer than anticipated. I've got to go pick up sushi for dinner tonight because we're going to celebrate with sushi. I feel a little better having gotten that frustration off my chest. Maybe you feel better for having listened to it, and if you like my videos and you like my content, please be sure to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, drop a comment in the comment section below. It feeds the algorithm. If you want to support the channel, all of the support links are in the pinned comment. I don't know if we actually have this shirt. Yes, we do have this shirt as one of the merch thingies in the link. But above all else, take care of yourselves, stay safe, stay healthy, check in on friends and family, make sure everybody else is doing fine, if not physically, mentally as well. And now you know you vlog. Peace out. Booyah!